We know that net zero 2050, which is 25 years away, we read in the papers that this will be the first region of the UK to have their own climate commissioner. Why are we prioritising this above other regions?
I don't necessarily know that I would say that we're prioritising it. I mean, the thing I'd want to make very clear is this is a requirement of the Act that we have a climate commissioner here. It is required by law. In terms of why we would have a climate commissioner where others don't, the challenges are slightly different here than what they are in other jurisdictions. In that, for a start, we align with two legislative regimes around climate change reduction. We have our own, but we also still contribute on the UK climate change targets. And also the Act has made clear that we are part of a single biogeographic unit with the Irish government as well. So you could argue we're part of three. So we have quite a complex legislative framework there. The other thing, the nature of our economy is different than anywhere else across these islands. More dispersed population, fewer large economic centres, greater reliance on agriculture. So there are some particular challenges that we have from a public policy perspective that a climate commissioner could probably help give a bit more scrutiny to.
So time after time we hear at committee about when we're looking at historical and legacy and different things, it takes forever to see them coming out the other end, whereas this climate commissioner in my eyes seems to be prioritised. There's a £1 million budget for the person to create an empire. I think, to me, this is absurd that this is something that's being prioritised. It blows my mind. There's £1 million being set aside for this to create an empire, for red tape, for bureaucracy, and to have this as something that seems to be steamrollered through. I certainly have massive concerns about. So that £1 million, can you give us a breakdown into how much of that is for staffing and how much of that is for infrastructure to help set up the office?
We can get you the breakdown after today in terms of what we think, although what I would say again, that £1 million you've described as having been set aside has not yet been set aside. It will be subject to business case approval and those monies being available. So just to be absolutely clear, not set aside and still subject to those approvals. But we will need to go through that process if and when these regulations are made. In terms of the Climate Commissioner being prioritised, again, I would go back to my first statement, and I've already said it somewhere else here today. This is a requirement in the law. So Section 50 of the Act, which has been in law now for almost 3 years, requires TU to establish a Climate Commission, and that's why it's being prioritised.
So looking at this, we have 25 years, we're creating an empire, and this empire will simply grow as time progresses. We look at the agri-industry and what this place has agreed to will absolutely devastate the backbone of our economy. What role will the Commissioner play in wielding the axe upon many farmers across Northern Ireland? Will they be providing information? Will they be providing advice to the Area Minister, or what role will they have in the likes of that?
It will be when the Climate Commissioner is here. The Climate Commissioner won't have a role in holding any axe. They will provide advice and recommendations to departments here in terms of how to manage the transition to a net zero economy. Part of that, what will be very important, is that they engage with a whole range of stakeholders, whether that be the farming community, whether that be businesses and community sector here. So they will have to engage right across the board.
So is the £1 million in the current budget that's out for consultation?
I'd have to go and check that. I'm not sure that it is, because even then, the £1 million budget is per annum. We would not be expecting much of that to be spent in the current year, given that there's going to be an appointments process that's required before then. So, with a fair wind, we're talking about an appointment of a Climate Commissioner within this year. That won't draw much of that £1 million, nor would the staffing by the time we work that through. So it's more likely to be from the next financial year on.
And final point, you had mentioned sponsored by TEO. Does that mean that the cost for this empire will come out of the TEO budget?
The cost of the Climate Commissioner, their operating budget, would come from TEO primarily, yes.
Yeah, just to put on record, I have serious concerns about the spend that's anticipated to be spent with the Climate Commissioner. I have massive concerns about an empire set up and no good will come of this. Northern Ireland is quite small on the global scale. We have a duty to make sure the planet is passed on to the next generation, so, you know, in better shape than we inherited. But I think going down this route of having somebody wielding the axe going through a lot of our industries isn't the right way. This won't support business. This will not support our agri-industry. And certainly I have concerns about what's proposed regarding the budget that will be associated with this.
Okay, thank you.